Hey Timbers, gamers, everybody, what's going on? Game Time with Kyle here. Another great amateur video game show here on YouTube, just like the other 500,000. You know, it's been at least 8 or 9 episodes since our last video game console system overview, and you know, we can't have that. We got to do one every now and then. After all, it's kind of what this channel is kind of, in some way based on. Taking a look at these great consoles, and we got a great one for you today. It's actually a very old one from 1978, and it's, I'll lose the adapter here, everything's all connected. The Magnavox Odyssey 2. Great controller too, one of my favorites of all time. Simple controller. This is the Magnavox Odyssey 2, the follow-up to the Magnavox Odyssey, of course, which was released in the early 70s, and that was the very first ever video game console. They followed that up a short time later with a number of Pong clones, but in 1978 they finally did a full-on sequel, and this was, of course, you know, it was competing with like the Atari 2600, and a little bit later on, consoles such as the Intellivision. A little bit later on. For our friends in Europe, this is also known as the Philips, what is it called? Philips Video Pack, I believe. And that's because at the time, in the late 70s, Magnavox was sort of a subsidiary of Philips. So sort of Magnavox, Philips were among the same companies, and Philips Video Pack over there. In Brazil, it was actually the Philips Odyssey. So a couple different variations, of course. They all looked a little different as well versus our little U.S. version of Magnavox Odyssey. And it was released, you know, 78, 79 in other parts of the world. Japan, this did not do very well in Japan at all. Mostly because when Japan got it, it was actually then 1982. I want to say 82, possibly 83, but one of those years for sure. And I think it was 82. So they got it a little bit later, and of course by then a number of other great systems were out, and soon Japan would have a console called the Famicom released, and of course that's the Nintendo NES. So they really stood too much of a chance, but it had a lot of great games. We're going to be taking a look at, we're going to do a little bit of an unboxing tour of the console, controllers themselves. We're going to play at the end, I'm going to show off a little bit of gameplay. Some of the boxes came with a pack-in game. This is, I got a couple in the original box, so I have about 10 to a dozen Odyssey games in the original box. So that's pretty cool. Speedway, Spinout, and Crypto Logic, sort of 3 games in one. And we'll also be taking a look at one of the more popular games on the Odyssey, KC Munchkin, sort of a Pac-Man type clone. So, yeah, there's a little bit of the history of the Odyssey. Unfortunately, this discontinued about 83, 84. Did very well actually here in the U.S. It sold right about 1 million, maybe just a little over 1 million units, which is very respectable. And worldwide, by the time it was discontinued, sold right about 2 million. So it did very good. Unfortunately, we never saw another Odyssey 3 or anything from Magnavox since then. So, system overview, gameplay, next on Game Time. Thanks for watching, everyone. Alright, and with the Odyssey 2, I'm very pleased to have the original box for it. It's very 70s, late 70s, you can tell. See a little bit there, tilt the camera up. Odyssey 2, the sequel to the very first ever gaming system, the Magnavox Odyssey. So, kind of fun. The box is a little beaten up. It's not in the greatest shape, but pretty fun. So, definitely privileged to have that. Some wrapping in here. Pretty sure it's not the original wrapping, but on the cords and whatnot. Lots of great Odyssey memorabilia there. Got the old catalogs. Actually, I'm going to show these off on an upcoming video here, probably in the next 2 to 3 weeks. I'll show some classic gaming memorabilia, sort of like instruction manuals, and a lot of this vintage advertising for some of these older systems. The owner's manual, you know, that's, for example, one of the things I'll be showing off. So that's going to be a great video. I'm really looking forward to doing that. Here's the Odyssey 2 itself. And it's definitely going to look like a very unique system. Be a little careful with the box here. Just because it's a little beaten up doesn't mean it needs to be more. Set it on the floor. And yes, a very odd console here. Adjust the camera one more time. Because it definitely looks more like almost like an old school computer than anything else, and for the most part it kind of is. Get this all untangled here. So it hooks up to the TV, kind of like the like old school Atari and television, ColecoVision and whatnot. Those, you know, sort of RF switch there, so that gets plugged into a little cable box which goes into the TV. All right, there we go. Magnavox Odyssey 2 is right there. Cartridges will go in here. Here's the power button for the game. That presses in. And as you can see, we get a nice little keypad here. Not a lot of games use that. A few do. It's not overly important. But sometimes you can select if one of the particular games has a certain... I'll show you what I'm talking about here. Like, for example, some packing game on some of these Odysseys came with this particular one. This actually comes with Speedway, Spinout, and Cryptologic. So, for example, that's 3 games with this particular cartridge. So it will have you select like 1, 2, or 3, and that will do the game there. Same with selecting players and whatnot. Cryptologic is kind of like basically like a hangman, where one player will essentially type in a word, you know, obviously without the other player or players looking at it, and then the other players will have to try to guess what that word is. So kind of a fun use of the keyboard there. The cartridges, well, let's do the joystick here. Of course, adapter, pretty standard. Nice and small compared to some of the later adapters. Joystick for the Odyssey 2 might look very familiar for those of you fans of the Ataris. One button there, and a nice joystick. But the thing with this joystick, it's a little hard to tell on the camera. That's probably a good angle right there. It's actually on a ball controller. Like, there's a little bit of a nice ball in there, and it rotates very nicely. You got a little star format, so you can kind of do that. This, honestly, I do like better than the Atari controllers. I find those joysticks a little more stiff or whatnot, but these are just nice and smooth, and it's really the right length. It's nice hand size, and it's just so nice. It's loose and everything, and the button's nice and big right there, so really feels very arcade-like for a lot of these games because the joystick just works so well. One unfortunate thing, kind of like the Intellivision, those controllers are actually built right into the system, so unless you're good at maybe taking it apart and installing or inserting some new joystick controllers into the system, you're pretty much left with, if one of these breaks and you're not inept in opening these up, you're pretty screwed. So, but yeah, absolutely great joysticks. One of my favorites ever. The cartridges themselves, I'm fortunate enough to have a few boxes. We gotta take a look at the box art for some of these games. I just have a couple laying around. This is one of the games we'll take a look at here in just a moment. As with probably one of the more commonly known Odyssey games, KC Munchkin. This is essentially the Pac-Man clone of the time, but has a couple of variations that makes it even, in some ways, better than Pac-Man, in some ways not. He's like a blackjack game. Look at that, that's just late 70s art at its finest, I think. Las Vegas blackjack. Have the instruction manual with a lot of these games. Pachinko as well. Popular game in Japan. This is very Japanese looking Pachinko. I get to see there. Box is a little beaten up, but you know what? I think they're in great condition. But yeah, the cartridges themselves, kind of like it. They actually have handles on them. You can just insert their pretty much basic, you know, Atari / ColecoVision and whatnot. The inside's a little bit different. You can't necessarily like old-fashioned way of blowing into them or anything. You kind of can, but you can't really get into them very well. And they'll be inserted just like that, facing forward. We press down, and what would essentially happen, we would hit the power button, and the game would come on. This game, for example, features a couple of different variations in the mazes, so we could hit, you know, maze 1 or maze 4, I think. One of these, I think 3 or 4 takes place sort of in the dark when you're not moving. Or excuse me, when you're moving, the maze kind of disappears, so it makes it a lot more challenging. Lots of variations for a lot of these Odyssey 2 games. Really like that. And also, yeah, when the game's inserted, we can hit this red triangle button there, that sort of reset. It just kind of resets the system, so we don't have to press on and off all the time. This will take us back, essentially, to the beginning, and we can select all the games and players over again. So, and yeah, show the controller, or adapter, show off the controller. Really love that, nice and loose. It's perfect, very arcade-like. One of my favorite joysticks ever. Showed off some of the memorabilia that came with it, but we'll do a more detailed look at some of those old advertisements, like I said, in an upcoming video where we'll be taking a look at a lot of those old instruction booklets and whatnot. I think there could be a little bit of an interest for that. So, yep, Odyssey 2 microprocessor. Really not much on the sides. I know I normally do that to begin with, but just not a lot to show off. There's the back of it. Adapter does come out, by the way. So, and the, again, controller is kind of built in. It's a little cheesy how they did that. Just kind of have it right there, built right into the system. But, all right, let's take a look. First, we can do see what the packing game for some of these Odyssey 2s were. Take a look at a couple of the racing games. And we'll finish off with a maze or two of KC Munchkin, definitely one of the more popular Odyssey 2 games. So let's do that next. Alright, here we go, yes. It's going to be a little shaky to begin with. The same select game. So of course on the alphanumeric keypad here, we can do 1, 2, or 3. I'll do, we'll start with 1 here. We'll go skill. Wow, 1's good. This is the packing game that came with using the wrong controller. We gotta use the right controller here. Graphics wise, you can tell a little bit, pretty much like the Atari 2600, and basically looks and feels and plays like the 2600. Maybe a little bit more advanced in the console itself with the keyboard on there. You can use the letters and numbers to integrate some games with. I know the Atari did not have that, but Atari did have the ability to select game difficulty in black and white and whatnot. So nothing too much to this game. It's kind of a fun little game here. Can race and dodge the cars. Let's hit that red reset button on the console. There's that, and that also lets me do the volume here a little bit. Crank it up a couple notches. Let's do game 2. The previous game we just played was called Speedway. This is Spin Out, and it plays a lot like one of my favorite Atari 2600 games called Indy 500. So I'm going to do skill 2 on this one because it lets our cars go a little quicker. So we hold down. And of course these are all, you know, 1 or 2 player games. I have just 1 player there, so my opponent's not going to be able to race. But I can crash into him. Funny. Whoop. 3 laps around. So kind of your standard top-down car racing game. It would inspire, you know, lots of future top-down games. There's that. So let's reset one more time and do the Game 3 Crypto Lot. Oh, that wasn't in Game 3 at all. Do Game 3 here. Okay, I'm just going to turn the whole thing off. That's showing up Game 3 as well. Here's Crypto Logic and Game 4 for that one. So, basically how this would work, I would type in right here on the keyboard a word. Oh, then I do a backspace. Hit enter. Alright, then I would basically have another player, or friends or family, whatever. They would not see what I had just typed, so somehow you would have to type it in and hide it from being on screen, and they would have to try to figure what I just typed out was. So, nope, see, and I purposely hit a wrong letter there. So it's not, obviously it would be an M. I'm going to try to hit an I. Nope. So they would have to kind of keep guessing. You know, is it R? Nope. Is it an A? Nope. Is it a T? I? Is it an E? Nope. Must be an M. There you go. And it took me, well, you know, obviously it would take 5 tries. So, you know, that's kind of make your own fun. Maybe bring someone else in and they could do, they could try to solve the same word and see how many tries it would take them. So, kind of make your own fun there. You really use the keyboard. Pretty fun. I think there's also sort of a calculator here, not on this game, of course, but in other games. Alright, next up of our 2 games that we'll kind of show off, although that was technically 3 games, is KC Munchkin. Power that on. Ooh, there we go. Select game again. And this lets us do a couple different mazes. So, for example, again, I'll just hit the number 1. And here we go. We got our little Munchkin there. Little blue, obviously not Pac-Man guy. We can get our little power pellet here in our corner. Our monsters turn blue, and we would have to try to catch them. Otherwise, oh, that was close. I'll get this one here. Nice, we got 2 of them. Notice the dots move as well. And the monsters, or whatever, take a little longer to get back into normal form. So you may notice those numbers at the bottom. This actually took me just a little while to figure out myself. Oh crap! They got me. The numbers on the bottom actually took me a little bit to figure this out. You don't actually have multiple lives. You get 1 turn, basically, is essentially it. And you'll notice the 55 on the lower left-hand side. That is the score that I got on my first playthrough. Then there's a bunch of question marks there. So here I got 10, for an example, and that was my previous score. Now it's 0, because this is a whole other turn. So a lot of Odyssey 2 games, I noticed, use the same type of scoring, where it's just basically 1 try and it records the highest score. So I'm going to attempt my best to get over 55 on this one. We'll see how that goes. Oh, nice. That ain't going to be good. 31. That's okay. I'll hit the reset button and I'll do the number 2 this time. And you'll notice here, look at this, our map is, or our maze, whatever, is just a little bit different. And of course our high score was reset there on the lower left hand side. Really love the joystick on this game. So my current score is on the lower right hand side. 51, and it's going to go to the left-hand side. There it is, because that's the high score now, and we see we reset everything at 0. So if I was to play again, 51's our current high score. Neither I myself or another player would have to try to beat that. Let's do one more variation here. I'll hit the reset button. I'll do 4, I believe. Nope. Okay. 5? Don't tell me it was 3, the one I skipped over. No, that's a weird looking maze. There we go, on 6. It might have been 5 too, but when you're standing still, you can see the maze, but when you start moving, everything kind of disappears, so it makes it a little bit more challenging, because you don't really know where to go. Let's see if we can at least get a couple dots. Alright. A little bit of a score there. Correct. So yeah, a couple of fun variations, and it's not like the Atari didn't have this. They, that system had a lot of variations in their games too. So there it is, the KC Munchkin game, kind of a lot of fun. So there's a little bit of gameplay there. I'm just going to reset that there so I don't keep seeing my poor Munchkin die. That does it, everybody. Join our Facebook group page if you like. You can share some of your own system reviews or gameplay videos there. It's becoming slowly but surely becoming a good community. So, send a request or whatnot. We'll get you added, and good place to kind of come and hang out and chat about games and whatnot. I'll provide a link in the description. Otherwise, feel free to check out some of my other playlists. I do them in playlists. Like we have an Atari playlist, Nintendo, Sega, PlayStation, etc., etc. This is, our first video here in our Odyssey playlist. So feel free to check out the other videos. Subscribe if you like. Doesn't totally matter, but it helps keep you up to date on some new videos that we do here on Game Time. And otherwise, everyone stay classic. Thanks for watching so much. Appreciate it. We'll see you next time.